Welcome back to Behind the Workflow. Today we have our very, very first guest interview on our podcast. Usually it's just Taly and I, and we're so excited to welcome Dream Harper to the show today. Dream is a podcast launch strategist, host of Organizedpreneur, which Taly and I were a guest on, so you have to go and check out the podcast, and is also the founder of the business and podcasting networking event for female entrepreneurs.
Every month, she brings female entrepreneurs together for a live Q&A on all of the things that's business and podcasting as well. And it's packed with like real talk, great energy as always, and actionable answers. And we're actually going to be on that one next month too. Well, should I say this month? Because it's already July. How did that happen?
I know. What happened to the time? I know, right?
Literally. And also, like, can we just, I feel like it's like, I feel like we're the three best friends that, anyway, like, Dream can't get enough of us. So
I really can't.
Like, she can't get rid of us, you know? We're here now. Fun fact, though, we have to share a fun fact because we want you to get to know Dream. I mean, you're going to get to know her so much through this episode, but we want you to get to know her even more. She has a pet rooster named Percy, which we think says everything that you need to know about how she learned to lead with confidence.
Wow. So let me just I don't even know how to come in after that, right? How can I follow up with that one, right? So I had a pet rooster, and this was when I was a little girl. So I should have clarified that. So when I was a little girl, so I'm going to clarify it now, okay? So when I was a little girl in grade school, that was my first pet, okay? My very first pet was a rooster named Percy.
Wow.
So Percy used to meet me at the bus stop.
No way.
And so Percy got to know when I was getting out of school, right? So when I would get off of the bus, Percy would be actually coming to meet me at the bus stop.
God,
now,
so
that
cute.
was a beautiful thing and embarrassing all at the same time. Who in the world has a rooster meeting them at the bus stop? Right?
That's actually
Oh, yeah.
It's so cute. I
So
love
yeah,
it.
that was my first pet. Sometimes I share it, in depending on what virtual meeting I'm in or something like that. And I'll share a fun fact because most of the time people may or may not think I'm a pet person or, so they may not get that. So it's like, yeah, I do. My first pet was a rooster. So yeah, and I've had, dogs and cats. So I love pets, but that's the only chicken I had. So yeah.
Wow. I love that. I feel like that's like a really, like, I mean, it's not, I was going to say relatable thing, but like not everyone has a pet rooster, but it's also like animal people just find each other. You know what I mean? Like people who love animals, they just find each
Yeah.
other. And there's a deep level of like empathy when it comes to pets. So I really love that. You also have a new service. Taly, do you want to share a little bit about it? And Dream, you can feel free to expand because we're also going to share all of your links in the episode notes below too. And we will at the end recap all of the things that we're sharing today so how people can contact you. But yeah,
Yes.
Taly, do you want to share a
So
little bit?
Dream
Yeah.
just launched the 90-minute podcast bootcamp, and we're going to add that to our show notes. But if you want to say anything about it, Dream, this is your chance.
Well, first of all, so we started with the rooster story, but I didn't. So thank you, ladies.
It's a big segue.
Yeah, it's a great segue, right? So thank you, ladies, for having me on your first episode with a guest. This is not your first episode, but a first episode with a guest. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I feel like, I think I told Taly that we were sisters from another mister. So anyway, and it's thundering. I don't know if you can hear it, but there was just a clap of thunder. That says a lot about my mic, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. What kind of mic are you using? You want a product drop that for everyone who needs to upgrade from the Blue Yeti?
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So this one is called, it's Zeal Sound. I got it on Amazon for less than $50. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And I
amazing.
had a Yeti before that, and I still have it. But this one has, some buttons, and I can, do echo and all that kind of stuff. Some other bells and whistles. But anyway, I
That's
digress.
cool.
Yeah, so I just recently launched this boot camp, a 90-minute boot camp called the Launch, Host, and Grow Bootcamp, right? And so in the Launch, Host, and Grow Bootcamp, I show people how to leverage podcasting, how to leverage virtual events, and how to leverage their email list to grow their business. And so this is something that I've been doing for years. And finally this year, I had a name for it. I didn't even have a name for it, but I've been doing it all this time
Wow.
because I've been podcasting for a while. I've been doing virtual events for a while. I used to do in-person events, but of course we had a real good excuse to go virtual, right? A few years ago. And so I've been sticking with that because you can reach a lot of people. But the thing that ties all of that together is to have, a nice little system in place where everything is connected. And basically what the Launch, Host, and Grow methodology is all about, is to make sure that you're doing all of those things to keep people engaged, because some people, may think that, oh, it's just about launching a podcast. And that's true, but when you don't have a big audience, those people that have like millions of downloads and
Yeah.
they started out with a huge audience already. Most of them, when you think of like the Joe Rogans, and they were doing something else, right? And they launched a podcast.
Well, even just the way that podcasting has changed and
Yeah.
how much it's changed.
Yeah.
Like I started podcasting in 2018, and even from then to now, it's totally
It's
different.
totally
The way that you get discovered is totally different. How many shows there are
Yeah.
is so different. And so, like, how do you cut through the noise is really the question at the end of the day. And so it sounds like this boot camp gives you the opportunity to do that, to cut through the noise and get in front of the people that you want to be targeting.
Yeah. And I think the way
That's
that,
fantastic.
it does that, because you have to consider being in the online space, you have to find a way to cut through the noise and get people in your space, right? Because online, people are just scrolling and they just go to the next short or the next reel or whatever, And so if they're really interested, if you don't, I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a very short attention span. Even with movies, like if you don't catch me in the first 10 to 15 minutes, I'm out. Right. And so with social media and a lot of the other platforms, you have to catch people, you have to get them engaged with you. And so it's like this cycle that includes several touch points and different immersive opportunities to find out more, about you, to get to know, like, and trust you.
1000%. 1000%. Now, if we take a quick step back, how did you get into the podcast world? How did you become a podcast manager, someone who's launching shows for people, who's doing this production work? What did that look like for you?
So I launched my first podcast back in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't even
You
popular.
just blew my 2018 out of the water.
Wow.
So I launched my first podcast in 2013. It's still out there. It's called Organize Your Enterprise, right? It has 12 episodes. I launched it on, it was either SoundCloud or, no, it was on Spreaker. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I
I should mute myself. I can't stop.
Yeah. And I launched it. I mean, there's a lot of backstory behind it, and I'll share this really quickly. One of the reasons that I started podcasting was because way back in the day, probably before you all were born, I used to call in to this radio show, right, and request a song. So it was, the request line. And so the radio announcer, I would do this every Monday morning to get my day started. So it was a song by the Pointer Sisters called Automatic, right? And so I absolutely love that song. So every time I called in, he got to know my voice, right? So the radio announcer said to me, he said, "Hey, have you ever considered getting into the industry of," he didn't say podcasting, but it was more like a radio announcer. And so that was way back in the 80s. Okay. And he said, "You have such a great voice." He said, "I think you would be good at it." And by the way, we're still connected on Facebook. And so I said, well, I hadn't thought of that. I've kind of been told that before, but I didn't, never had I heard that from someone in the industry. Fast forward, it never, first of all, it never left my memory. And so I thought, when I first heard about podcasting, this is a good way to kind of, see if I like, what it's doing. Now, I didn't have a strategy. I didn't have systems on that particular platform. You can, have live audience in the background and clapping and all this kind of stuff. And if you were to look up Organize Your Enterprise, I think I have it on YouTube. I think I put it out there. And so I was just playing with the platform. That's what I was doing. I was playing with the platform. And that's when I launched those 12 episodes. But then I stopped because I didn't have a strategy and I didn't have a system. And here we are. So that was my first podcast. The second podcast was with my former business partner, where we will have a live call in. You call into freeconferencecall.com, and people would call in. And so we repurposed that into podcast. Now that is still out there. It has 400 episodes. And so now I have the Organizepreneur podcast, which is current, and I think I have like over 150 episodes. It's about 3 years old because I'm doing weekly episodes. The reason that the other podcast had 400 episodes because we were doing this 5 days a week.
Wow.
That's a lot of content. That is a huge undertaking. Taly, thoughts?
No, it was just, wow, that is a lot. That's a lot of commitment for sure.
Yeah.
And strategy.
But it kept me engaged. It kept me, moving, and it kept me learning. So that is pretty much my podcasting journey.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how you didn't have a workflow or anything like that. I know this is like Taly's domain is the workflow side. So I'm trying very hard to pull back here because I'm like, it's Taly's time to shine. Yes. Go ahead.
Listen, I could have used Taly had she been in this space way back then.
Same.
Not.
Same. I don't know where Taly was when I was trying to set up. Literally, I'm trying to think. I'm like, where was Taly when I was setting up my whole workflow on Trello and it was breaking every 3 seconds of my life?
I wasn't even using Trello. I was just winging it. I mean,
it feels the same.
Yeah.
Trello, winging it, feels the same. No, I'm just kidding.
True. Yeah. Because I had an organizing business too, so, but we'll talk about that later. So, Taly, what would you please interject?
No, I was just curious, like jumping into workflow, like what does like your podcast workflow look like from start to finish? Like even like on whenever you guys were doing the 5 episodes per week show, like how did you guys go through it? Like was it just like kind of wing it? Did you guys plan it? Like how did you guys think of like the subjects and like did you guys have guests? Just curious, like the whole process, how you did back then and also how you're doing now.
So that's a very good question. So the good thing is there were 2 of us, right? And we alternated weeks. So she was good at, so my business partner was good, kind of like you guys. I think the chemistry was kind of like you guys. So I'm more of a person that needs structure. So I, would sit down and think about my episodes a week or 2 before. Right. She was really good at like, just on the fly. I remember a couple of times we got on and she was like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to be talking about today, and I would be like, okay. So I wasn't a part of her workflow, but so I, had everything, like written down as far as my scripts and stuff. I had to stay with some type of script because I can get lost in the weeds. I can go on rabbit trails and somebody has to bring me back in. And so I would always have mine either on a doc, on a Google Doc or something like that, because it was audio. So that was the good part. Nobody could see my messiness behind the screen. So I would get my script done and my title. Now, whether it was SEO optimized, probably not. So
Nowadays,
yeah.
nowadays everything is
Yeah,
optimized
yeah.
nowadays.
And at the time it's still on Anchor. And it was, Spotify didn't own it at that time. So that was pretty much my process. So I would, think about what my topics were, have it, ready because I know I would be, 5 days. And then I would rest on the days that she was actually doing the episodes. But what also helped was that people were calling in. So that helped too. And so sometimes they would say, well, I'd like to hear more about, XYZ 1, 2, 3, right? But so that was honestly, that was like the pre-production, as we like to talk about. That was the pre-production part. The production part was typing it out, putting it on Anchor at the time, the title, and then scheduling it. And we did a little bit of resharing, but not a whole lot. But that was pretty much the whole process. It wasn't complicated.
How do you think that creators kind of overcomplicate things or overcomplicate their processes in general?
Oh my gosh. Overcomplicate, overthink, and I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say I go through that too, right?
Yeah.
But I think the difference is, when you know why you're doing your podcast, because if you're doing it to it's on your business and you're tying it into your business, then you have to have a way of tying everything together. You know what I mean? So it has to be,
Yeah.
you have to have a flow, right? Because if you're just doing it just to be, to have a podcast, then you may or may not have, a lot of success at it. But it depends on your why. I guess that's what I'm getting to. And if it's tied
Yes, for sure.
to leveraging your podcast for your business, the workflow is going to look different for everybody, if that makes sense.
That's a really, really good
Yeah.
point. And because everyone has a different type of
Yeah.
show with a different type of structure, a different purpose to the content. And ultimately, though, at the end of the day, I don't know if you hear this from your clients, but I hear this a lot from my clients is that, like, well, I don't have time
Oh yeah.
to do this. I don't have time to do this. I don't like the way that I look on cameras. It's like this thing. It's like people don't like the way that they look necessarily on a camera, and then they delay recording
Yeah.
it. And so now you've delayed up until like right before now the episode goes out.
Yeah.
And you don't have your episode. It's not edited. It's not recorded. We don't have show notes. There's no content. There's no
Right.
nothing. And it turns into this absolute
Yeah.
chaos. So what tools have helped you streamline your processes the most so that you can then in turn help and streamline other people's stuff too, the people you're working with?
So yeah, great question. So currently I am working with you ladies as far as, your Northflow is concerned, which by the way, it is absolutely amazing because it helps with so many aspects of your podcast, your pre-production, your production and your post-production, every aspect. You guys have thought this process and gotten, feedback from people and things like that. I think the thing that I love most about it was I was able to create this form for guests, and I had different pieces. And what is it that we call band-aids?
Yes,
Patching
duct tape.
things together.
Duct
Yeah,
tape.
yeah. And so now, being a professional organizer, it was very frustrating, when I didn't have those systems and those processes in place. But when you're doing everything and you don't have the right systems in place, it's going to get frustrating. It's going to cause a lot of procrastination. It's going to cause you to jump from here to there. Before I jumped on here, I was just on a call with a couple of my clients. And so one of them was saying, well, I'm kind of stuck because I'm multitasking, getting this done, and this, that, and that. And so when she was done, I let her finish. I said, well, first of all, let's stop the multitasking, ma'am, because that is your problem, because you're not completing anything. If you don't ever finish anything, you can't gain any momentum on your podcast. And so that's what I was sharing, So she's like, I've got 6 episodes and it's been a few months. I said, it's because you're multitasking and you're getting lost in the weed of one thing and then you jump ship. I said, every time you jump from one thing, you're starting over. And I know this from personal experience. It was the reason that I started my organizing business, which I don't do it, the same way now. I just help people. Basically, how you ladies are helping people is to kind of get organized in your processes, because when you're in this online space, there are so many moving parts that it's just unbelievable. If you have a business, you have a podcast, you're doing email marketing, there are so many moving parts. And so you just have to stick with, what you're doing until it's finished. But you also have to incorporate some automation, some SOPs, and products like yours with Northflow.ai. And being able to do that is going to help free up your time so that you have more creative space in your brain. You need that to be able to think creatively and be able to show up authentically, on your episodes, especially. And it helps a lot if you're doing solo episodes too, because
Yes,
that was one of the problems
absolutely.
with one of them that I was talking. She was like, well, I'm doing, solo episodes and sometimes I'm not able to think through, and I'm like, okay, well, that's your problem. You're multitasking. So I digress on that. Hopefully I answered the question.
You
I think
did.
so.
Yes, and just to add a number to it, haha,
Oh,
I
she
have
got
a stat
stats.
for
There
that.
we go. There we go.
I knew she would. I was hoping she would come
Yes.
in with the
Yes.
stat.
I have one. So, based on American Psychological Association, they actually said that task switching can reduce productivity up to 40%. So, just, when you try to
Wow.
multitask,
Yes.
just remember that
Yeah.
finish one thing and then move to the next, because
Yeah.
chances of you not being able to finish both is pretty high,
Yeah.
50% basically.
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yes. So, jumping to our next question here,
Mm-hmm.
you did mention about your clients. So, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you get your clients to follow your system? Is that something that you've thought, or have you been able to get your clients to start coming into your own workflow instead of them creating? Because I can share a quick backstory to
Mm-hmm.
this. We, as you guys know, we always mention this. We've been talking to people for a while, like different podcast managers, agencies, and one thing that we heard was this specific lady. She was awesome, by the way, but she mentioned that she was going in and managing multiple shows in different platforms because she was just going based on what her client needed, right? Like, so her client had, for example, one had it on set up on Trello, the other one was on Notion, the other one was on ClickUp. So she was going to all of these different platforms instead of creating her own templates, her own formats for all of her clients, like putting them into her own workflow. So I'm curious, Dream, like, have you thought about how you're going to be doing that? Or have you had an opportunity to talk to your clients overall and possible strategy, how you can get them to use what you have set up for them? This way, it's not just the process for you, but it's also a process for them and overall efficiency at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So far, they follow my instructions. So far, they will follow my instruction. One of the criterias is that if you want me to manage your podcast, in order for us to do this effectively, then we're going to have to follow this process. Now, I do have like a couple of clients that's doing interviews and then a couple of clients that's doing solo episodes. And so I know that there's going to be like a different variation of what the workflow looks like, right? But for the most part, once I get something in place, either if you want to bring your own system or your own process in there and you want me to help you, there's going to be a cost. You're going to have to pay me more in order for me to do that. If I do it. Because the one thing I don't like is a lot of stress. I'm too old for
Yes.
that.
I really resonate with this a lot because I run a production agency. And when I first started the agency, I had all kinds of processes and systems in everybody else's software. And it was so stressful because how do you keep people aligned when you're not all working out of the same
Yeah.
place? And then as an agency owner, like even, client messages in 1,000
Yeah.
places. Like none of that is organized. None of that is systematized.
Yeah.
And so, you have the chance to like fix it.
Yeah.
I would recommend
Yeah, yeah.
it.
And I will say also that, as I've shared with you ladies, so I'm not at the agency stage yet. And so we're learning because my clients sometimes they bring, well, a lot of times they bring some good ideas. Have you thought about XYZ one, two,
Mm-hmm.
three, And I will say, no, you know what? I haven't really thought about that, but let's try it, right? And so, because like one of my clients, she was using Zoom to record her episodes. And so I said, okay, that's okay. But if you're going to be paying for Riverside, then, you're
Yeah.
paying more money. So I try to get them to understand the benefit and the benefit of being efficient in our processes. Like you're going to get it quicker, you're going to get it sooner, you're going to have things better access, and it helps me work better for you. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it keeps the stress level for everybody. So as
Yeah.
I'm going through, these ebbs and flows, if you will, I'm learning some things. And so there's some things that I'm going to have to kind of really put my foot down on as well, because I
Yeah.
haven't had anybody that's been really adamant about their process yet. Usually they come with me, but as you
Pretty
grow,
open.
you have more
Yeah.
problems. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
hope that
And
makes
the
sense.
And one thing I see too, like you could actually set, like, you can position your workflow as a benefit and not a
Yeah.
boundary, because like you could show them like, hey, I came up with this process, this is working for these amount of clients plus my own show. And then like and you can tell them like, when you follow this system you'll get better results with less back and forth. And you can show to them that you have it down, like you
Yeah.
have it organized.
Yeah.
And this will also give them, like, in a way, better visibility,
Yeah.
because if they're one of the clients that like to go in and see everything, you can make them a member. Like as you are using Northflow
Mm-hmm.
Dream, you can actually make them a member, and they'll be able to go in and see exactly where each task is on, like if it's in progress, if you haven't started yet, or if it's completed. They can give, like, put comments there. But if they're one of those clients that they don't want to be part of it, they just want to get an email, you could just get them as a contact, and they'll be able to just answer the questions or provide an asset that you're missing. So you could actually basically coach them through
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
bottlenecks,
Yeah.
like, and you could ask like, what it would help if you added a time, like, timeline reminder maybe,
Yeah.
or just like a due date to specific tasks. And
Mm-hmm.
is there someone else on the team that could help, like you can actually get them to know, like, or just get them to answer like, hey, if you're not able to answer these questions by the time I need them, even like having a backup person that you could go to as an agency to
Mm-hmm.
get an answer, just to avoid all the bottlenecks and all. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dream, for going into more details about how you're planning on doing with your clients. So I have a question that will, and we can wrap up after this, but what is one workflow tip that you would live for our audience? I would love to hear that from you.
I guess it would be based on the way I open up, my podcast. I say where strategy meets simplicity, and I would say keep it simple. Document so that you don't have to keep
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the next thing you got to do, right? Document everything, and then when you have that done, it's easier to delegate. That was the one mistake that
Cool.
I made. Oh my gosh. Even in my organizing business, I thought it would be a good idea to delegate when I had all the systems in my head. Everything was in my head. So keep it simple, as if you are about to hire someone into your business just off the street. Just keep it simple.
Fantastic
Yeah.
advice.
Yes,
That is
for sure.
fantastic advice because, and I think a lot of creators, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, agencies can relate to that because you start up your own agency, you start up your own business, you start your own podcast. It's your thing, right? Until you bring somebody else in and then it becomes an our thing. It's still your
Yeah.
thing, but it's a team now working
Yeah.
on it. But if you're the person who's leading it and everything, the whole business lives within your head and nobody else knows or understands how to work it, you have a huge problem. And I have felt this
Mm-hmm.
problem personally in my own agency because when I started, we never prioritized SOPs. We never had templates for, like, we had templates for some things, but not in the same way that we do now for clients in Northflow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it, we had some things, but we didn't have everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really great advice. Dream, as we wrap up today, where can our listeners go so that they can sign up for your next networking event and also your podcast bootcamp? We will put all of the links in the notes below, but please share that with our listener before we
Yes.
sign off.
So I have a digital card instead of a website. I do have a website, but it's too much. Anyway, so the digital card is hihello.me/organizedpreneur. And so if you go there, you'll find all the links to connect with me, to watch. There's a free masterclass. There's all my social links there, as well as joining the boot camp. So the boot camp is once a month, and once a month. I'm changing it next month to twice a month because it's only 90 minutes.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
it.
That's good.
And so, and I'm really excited about it because I believe in this process and I believe in it because I've done it. It's how I get my leads. It's how I connect on a deeper level with people that, want to know, like, and get to know, like, and trust me. It really does work. And it's a process that works. It's simple and it's something that, you can do, right? People can do it. They can do a virtual event. They can, set up their email systems because the thing is this, and I want to leave, kind of leave with this. We don't own any of the social media stuff. And I know this is not new to people that's listening. We don't own any of that, right? We don't even own Spotify or, those hosting platforms, right? But it's a good way to leverage your podcast, hosting a virtual event so that they get to know you better, right? And then getting them off of social media and nurturing those people that want to hear from you via the email list. And so it's something that I know that it works. There's statistics. I'm sure that Taly knows some statistics out there. There are statistics out there that especially with email, like you're more likely to get people to want to buy from you, right? It increases, like, I think it's like 40% or something like that. I can't remember. I'm sure Taly she can probably confirm that. But I think it was Get Response that had that statistic out there. But anyway,
35 to 40% average email open rate.
there we go.
If they know you over
There we
social
go.
media.
Yeah. Because on the socials, people are just scrolling and people's attention
Yeah.
span, is just, So yeah. So jump in, right now, that 90-day boot camp is only $47. So there's that.
Listen, that's really reasonable. Especially if you're trying to take your podcast, put it in front of a new
Yeah.
audience, understand why it is you're doing the thing that you're
Yeah.
doing. This might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say
That's
it
okay.
anyways. But a lot of the times, in the creator space, especially, a lot of the stuff that people do is a hobby, right?
Yeah.
It starts as a hobby. You get excited, you do the thing, and you're so passionate about it and you want to do it. And because it's a hobby or because it's not making you money, right? I get this a lot. My podcast's not making money, so I shouldn't spend on it. But that's like the craziest thing, though, because if there's anything that you love in your life, you're going to find a way to make
Yeah.
it work,
Yeah.
right? And so if the growth of your show is important to you, or understanding why it is you're doing the show to begin with is important to you, you'll figure out a way to find the $47. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a way.
Like you find a way to
Always a way.
a way to pay for everything else. you
100%.
know, and
100%. 100%.
so yeah, I mean, and I wanted to
Beautiful.
make it, you know, easily accessible for most people who are struggling, but, you know, to make sure that they get leads. And it eventually it pays for itself. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if you get a client that's paying you, you know, $1,200, like you more than paid for it, right? I mean, you know, got your money's worth out of it. So, yeah.
Dream, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
I really appreciate it. You know, I love you ladies. I love your energy. I love what you're doing. And I'm still on the front end of getting things implemented into my Northflow workflow. But I'm so excited about it. And so I think you've all felt that when, you know, we first connected. It's like, I'm so excited about this. Let's go.
100%. 100%. That's how we feel every single
Yeah.
day. We're like, hello, everyone, come join us. It only makes the most sense for your
Right,
podcast.
right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today on this episode. Thank you for being here, watching on, on YouTube, listening, wherever you're listening to the show. If you want to be a guest on our podcast and chat about your workflow and talk about your show, please send us a message. We would love to have you and explore that conversation. And we will see you next time behind the workflow. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.